short period, and partly because my friend here, Bhante Arya Dhammika, is someone I've known for many years now. Actually, how many? 14 years since we were together in Paok in Burma. But at that time, actually, I didn't really get to know him because we were so diligently meditating. We didn't have time to speak to each other. I literally hardly spoke to him during that period. Just the occasional hello, and we had some classes together. But at the end of the stay, when I was leaving for Thailand, to go back to my monastery, then Bhante came to see me and said he's interested, when he's finished the Paok style Burmese training after 5 years, to come to Thailand and learn and study more the Ajahn tradition. And I said, fantastic, when you're ready, just let me know. We'll arrange a visa and you can come. So then we lived together in Thailand. We talked a bit more in Thailand. It's a bit more social than in Burma. We went to the jungle together. We helped build a sala, a meditation hall in Wat Pananacha. And then Bhante left to travel, and I more or less lost touch, didn't know what happened. Until last year, somebody said, oh, Arya Dhammika is the abbot in Taiping. I said, what? How did that happen? Last thing I expected, I thought you'd go disappear solo into some cave in Sri Lanka and never come out. So it turns out now we have him here. So this is how it works. This is how the world works. We have our karma, and no one knows what's going to happen in future. So anyway, I'm very glad because now I come and visit after all these years and come here and spend a few days. My first visit, May 2005, I visited for about 20 minutes. So I didn't really get much of a flavour, really. It was nice to pay respects to Bhante Agachita, and he paid respects to our senior Ajahn, Lupolium. But we were driving that day from Penang to Ipoh, so we just stopped for a drink and then carried on our way. So this is a visit now to see the Sangha growing, to see laymen coming to ordain, to see lots of people interested to hear Dharma is very encouraging. It feels uplifting because it feels like we're part of something which is needed, and it's also very beautiful. And as our MC said, today is the full moon day. It's what we call the Uposatha day. And in our Buddhist calendar, especially in Thailand, it's celebrated as a very special day. We actually call it Maga Puja. Generally, everybody knows Vesak. In Thai, we call it Vesaka Puja, so the celebration or the veneration of the Vesak day, which is often called Buddha Day. Many people also know Asalaha Puja. It's the entering of the rains. It's often called the Dhamma Day because it's the day when the Buddha taught the first teaching, the Dhamma Pavatana Sutta, when the Buddha set the Dharma rolling, this teaching, this tradition, this religion, this Sangha which has lasted, which has rolled on 2,500 years and can't be turned back. But there's another special day which in Thailand, they turned it into a special event. I guess they figure in Buddhism you have to have 3 of everything. So we need 3 special days. So they said, what's the third one going to be? So Maga, this month is called Maga in Pali. So it's called Maga Puja Special Day. In Thailand there will be many, many people in the monastery, and because it's the dry season, cool weather, we have a lovely candle-lit circumambulation, walking around the stupa, walking around the JD, walking around the hall. But why? What is Maga Puja? And why is it often then called Sangha Day? Buddha Day, Vesak, Dhamma Day, Dhammachaka. Today is called Sangha Day. Traditionally, in India, in the scriptures you read that during the Buddha's first year after his enlightenment, he was staying in a town called Rajagaha, which is in modern days Rajgir in India. And on that day, on this day, it's the full moon night of Maga, the month of Maga. He was dwelling in the first ever monastery that had been given to him, gifted by the king, King Bimbisara. It's called the Veluwana, which means the bamboo forest. So the Buddha was in the bamboo forest, the first monastery, the full moon night. And on that night, 1,250 or thereabouts monks who were all arahants, they were all arahants fully enlightened, came together to pay their respects to the Buddha on that night. And they were you could say the first generation, that first year, so the first group, the first year that the Buddha had been teaching after his first vasa, first pansa, rains retreat, and wandered through India. Monks had come to ordain from different traditions, and there was 1,250. And they all gathered together. And the Buddha didn't tell them to come. It's sort of thought of as a bit of a magical thing because they all came together spontaneously. I know we all came together because you got the online invite, the notification. In those days they didn't have notifications. But anyway, they came. And at that time there was no monk's rules. The Buddha hadn't laid down the rules yet, so there was no recitation of the rules like we have today. But what happened is the Buddha gave a very important teaching, which is often called the summary of the Dhamma. The summary of the Dhamma, or the Dhamma in brief. And actually there's many lines, but the famous 3 lines are, and in a sense, if you just remember one thing tonight, just remember this. Somebody says, what did I say? What did Ajahn Siri say? You went all the way to Taiping, what did you hear? Just this is enough. You don't need to learn very much every day or every Dhamma talk. So it starts, avoiding all evil, sabba pāpasa karana. To do good, kusala supasampada. Train the mind, sajjita prayotapana. So these are the 3. The order sometimes changes depending on how you chant it, but these 3 are often considered the key principles, the summary, and it's a very good summary. So I'll say it again, and I'll say it again later. To avoid evil, to do good, train the mind. And in just those 3 simple sentences, you have everything. Of course, it's not a big detailed explanation. You might say, well, what is evil? What is good? How do we define it? Blah, blah, blah. How do we abandon it? How do we avoid it? And then how do you train the mind? And you go on retreats, and you study the suttas, and you do satipatthana, samatha vipassana. Everybody has different theories. Some of you probably learning Abhidhamma, or maybe you tried learning, but now you've given up, or whatever. But the essentials we can all agree on. That the point is not to do the wrong thing, to do the right thing. And then how you do it, or based on that, once you've got the basics down, you can move forward, you can train your mind. And this is so simple, yet so profound and so important. And there are stories. I heard this kind of story, it was explained, told once, a kind of like old Chinese story of this man who was wanting to find the ultimate Dharma, the most powerful teaching, the real truth. And he was told, far, far away, there's a hermit, there's a Chinese sage living in a cave, and he'll give you the answer. And this man walked this journey, many thousand miles, and finally reached him and asked, what's the essence of the Dharma? And the sage said this: avoid So I'll begin by saying that this is an important day for that reason, that we get these important teachings. And in a sense, just looking at some of the t-shirts people are wearing, it's got the same general principle: mind your thoughts, or avoid suffering, be happy. That's really what is at the heart of why we're here, what we're doing. We're born into this world. We have at least this life that we know, bound up with aging, sickness, death. We have happiness, we have dukkha, we have our hopes and our dreams. We all share that. We all breathe, we all love, we feel, we fear. But we want to know, okay, but how are we going to live this life? What's the best way to lead this life? So this very simple principle: avoid evil, do good, train the mind. And I think it's important that the order is to avoid evil and do good comes second. So it's like when you take the precepts. I'm sure many of you taken the 5 precepts, and you say, we request the precepts, and it's Bānāti Bātā Veramani Sikkhapadam Samadhiyāmi Adinādāna Veramani. Those are avoiding evil. You see, there's no instruction to do anything good, right? Veramani means I refrain, I abstain. It's like just saying stop. You say Paranti, right? Boleh Paranti? Boleh, right? It means stop, abandon, refrain, give up. That's the first step, and that's already really good. So if you were driving a car, you don't have to be an expert driver. Just don't drive dangerously. You see, you don't have to be fast or have some special technique. To be a safe driver, you just don't drive in a dangerous way. You're already a safe driver. You're already a good driver, right? So that's why it's really important to be healthy. You avoid unhealthy food, you avoid unhealthy occupations, or you avoid unhealthy posture. You're already halfway there. You don't have to do anything. It's worth thinking about. Then of course you have the capacity to do good. So in fact, avoiding unwholesome is already good, but then you do more in your life. We have dana, we have ways of being helpful, we have ways of being positive. And then of course we can train our mind. This is more specific mental training. We call it meditation, or even just developing wholesome qualities like metta, loving kindness, or patience. Now in this teaching, what's called the Ovada Patimokkha, the teaching in brief, another very, very important line is Khanti Paramang Tapo Titika. Khanti means patience or patient endurance. And the line means patient endurance is the highest practice which will burn up the defilements, or which will eliminate your unwholesome tendencies. Or I can see people are wearing 3 distorted perspective t-shirts. Patient endurance will eliminate your distorted perspectives, or at least will be part of it, will be a very important factor. Why? Because we have to be able to bear with unwholesome things. And then we have to have the strength, we have to bear with it while we abandon, while we're doing anything. It's difficult. When working is difficult. Having babies is difficult. Growing vegetables is difficult. You have to have patience. So without that patience, you basically can't do anything. And generally, good things in life are not easy. It's almost a defining factor of something which is good. It's hard to do, or it's hard to come by. It's rare. So in this teaching on this night, why I think it's worth thinking about whether it really happened or not. You can't prove it, but we imagine on this night in India, 2,500 or 560 or 2,600 years ago, the Buddha's teaching, this teaching to a group of monks. And they were all enlightened. In a way, they didn't need to know it. They knew it already. They had already trained their minds. But of course, you love hearing the Dharma, you love sharing the Dharma, and it's how it gets recorded, at least for later generations. And so we have this, so we come together now, all these years later, and we can still share these same teachings, these same truths. And this afternoon up on the hill in SBS, the monks, we got together and we recited our monks' rules. And so these rules were laid down slowly during the Buddha's time. But what it means is that every single full moon, new moon, full moon, new moon, 2 weeks, every 2 weeks, so every year roughly 26 times, in India and then in these countries and now all over the world, monks are gathering and chanting this in an unbroken line for 2,600 years. It's very, very powerful. And I don't know of any other tradition or any other such thing that exists anywhere else in the world where you have an unbroken lineage, unbroken tradition of coming together and talking and sharing or reciting principles of sila, principles of ethics, of virtuous conduct. So today is a special day, and I know many people have travelled to get here. I myself travelled here especially. I wanted to make sure I was here with my fellow monks on this day. I can share the monastic training with them and share my kalyana mitta, friendship. And in a sense, that's how it works. That's how we support each other in our spiritual path, in our life. Another really famous teaching is about spiritual friendship. Many of you will know this, that one time the Buddha said, in a reply to the Venerable Ananda, the Buddha said, spiritual friendship or good friendship is the whole of the holy life, or is the whole of the spiritual life. Because Ananda had said, Lord Buddha, friendship, good friendship must be at least half of the holy life, you know? At least 50% of what's important must be friendship. And the Buddha said, don't say that, don't say 50%. And you would think that's too much, but the Buddha said, no, spiritual friendship is the whole of the holy life. Meaning it's really, really important. Without good friends, without good family, without the support, it's almost impossible to do. Then the Buddha went on to talk about the Eightfold Path, the middle way. So it's not just about friends. It's associating with the beautiful. Good friends in Pali is kalyana mitta, which literally means beautiful friendship or beautiful acquaintance. So you can also mean a beautiful acquaintance with the Dhamma, beautiful acquaintance with the Eightfold Path. But it also, the first level is people. Who we affect and what affects us is people. We all have, old age, sickness and death. That we can't change. So we're stuck with the body. We're stuck with the external conditions. These days it's climate crisis. Now it's, what's it called, coronavirus. You can't change that. The government, you're stuck with that, you can't change that. So people, we don't worry too much about that as Dharma practitioners. Because what we know is we're looking inwards and we're concerned with the immediate things around us, the things we really can affect and the things that can affect us. And that's friendship. that's why, as part of our training, we avoid the unwholesome. Okay, I'll repeat it again, just so that you really get it. Abandon evil, avoid evil, do good, train the mind. The thing we have to be really careful about is how we relate to our fellow human beings. That's the way we're going to really create big dukkha or create a lot of sukha in our lives, through the right people and the right relationships, the right ways of relating. And actually how we relate to people, more than the physical side, is speech. So again, just jumping around with some teachings, the way we speak to each other is like a real way of doing good, because when you speak you are doing something. So when you say, well, how do I do good? Okay, you avoid lying, avoid harmful speech, frivolous speech, these kind of things, gossip. But then we can also do good without speech. It's one way which we really, like right now I'm speaking, okay, I'm trying to avoid unwholesome speech, but I can also cultivate positively wholesome speech by saying truthful things, by saying beneficial things, by saying timely things, you know. And so these are sort of principles which, again, so today, as I said, one way of understanding it is calling it Sangha Day, because it's the day that so many Sangha members came together and we celebrated like that, like a gathering, and the Buddha gave this teaching and laid down some really key principles on this day. But the point is that it's that community, it's the sense of gathering. In fact, Sangha literally means community. It doesn't necessarily mean the Bhikkhu Sangha or the enlightened Sangha. One meaning is just community, just a group that come together, can mean that. And the Thai word for society comes from Sangha. In Thai it's Sangkhom. Sangha, Sangkhom. It means society, like lay society. So we're always talking about how to make society good, how to benefit society. Well, in Buddhism, in Dhamma, I really think it's important. We really begin with ourselves. It's the place to start. We look in as much as we look out, or more than we look out. So making the effort to come here tonight, myself making the effort to come to SBS in our lives, as well as patient endurance, it's always bound up with effort. It's another key principle of the Dharma. It's not easy, to be honest, especially in the world if there's pressure to be dishonest. It's not easy to keep the 5 precepts. There are so many times and so many ways where we break the precepts, and I know even myself as a layman so often breaking the precepts. Even when I thought of myself as a Dharma practitioner, meditator, go to the temple, been a novice, but living the student life, it's just the temptation or the pressure to break precepts. And actually a lot of the time people ask monks, it's a very common question, okay, why did you ordain? And one reason, it's just one reason, was that I just wanted to find a way to keep the 5 precepts, because I just couldn't do it. And I was thinking one night, I was in Russia, and living in Russia as a layman, after my student days, before ordaining as bhikkhu, and breaking the precepts, I've been drinking, and I walked out into the road. I needed to get some air. It was like a party, a lot of people. And I walked out, and I just lay down in the road. Literally just lay down in the middle of the road. It was like middle of the night, there was no cars. And then I fell asleep. And then I woke up, I don't know how long after that. It could be just a second. But just the shock of waking up. Where am I? And I'm in the middle of the road, lying like this. Literally, I was looking at the stars, and I'm like, wow. And I realized in that moment, I said, I just got to find a way to keep the 5 precepts, because that's really dangerous. It was just such a shock, just to realize that I could just... So I don't mean to turn tonight into a confessional, but just to share with you how important the 5 precepts are, and how, in a sense, it's difficult to keep, and you sometimes get this insight. I have to find a way to keep the 5 precepts. Now, becoming a monk is quite an extreme, drastic measure, and it's only part of the story. But it really helps if you have that feeling, if you have that clear, right view, that if you can't refrain from evil, if you can't avoid evil, you're in trouble. You've got to find some way, some supportive means to lead a life, so they call it a safe life. Because you break the precept, you break the 5th precept, very dangerous, I'm sure many of you know. And you go through each of the precepts, you just see how you can wreck your life using breaking these 5 precepts. Which is why metta is such an important factor. Because in a way, keeping the 5 precepts is an act of metta towards yourself. If you really develop loving kindness, metta, people don't know, is loving kindness. Usually we translate it like that. But metta, the same root word as mitta, which means friend. So it means having a friendly mind, viewing yourself like a friend, or viewing other people like a friend. I have metta for you, I feel you're my friend, you're not my enemy. There's a kind of love. It's okay to use the word love as well. Loving friendliness, loving kindness, friendly love, warm love. So just distinguish it from sensual or sexual love or romantic love. It's just a warm person-to-person good feeling. To keep the precepts, you develop metta towards yourself, because you wish yourself the best. You wish yourself safety. You wish yourself to not make enemies. You wish yourself, for example, you wish your family to stay together, so you're faithful to your husband or your wife. You wish yourself to be an honest person, or to be viewed as an honest person, or you wish yourself not to get in trouble with the law. So when you really love yourself, keep these precepts, I wouldn't say necessarily naturally, because it's always sometimes a struggle, but you really want to keep these precepts. You really want to begin living a life of sila. So in a way, once you begin to understand the Dhamma, how it works, you stop separating these things so much. You see how in many ways all the Dhamma evolves around one principle, which it does, which is actually is about eliminating suffering, finding happiness. But you see how one precept, the first precept, the second precept, third, fourth, fifth, really they're the same thing. They're talking about taking care of yourself, taking responsibility for your life, and taking responsibility for the people you relate to, and even all living beings, trying to live a life with as much metta for yourself and other people, avoiding evil, doing good, cultivating the mind. Again, 3 ways of distinguishing the same thing, or 3 aspects of the same teaching. Train the mind, purify the mind, give up suffering. It all means the same thing. And even if you get more you get into the different teachings, I'm sure many of you understand the 4 Noble Truths, the 3 characteristics, the Eightfold Path. They're all different ways of saying the same thing. That which is impermanent is never going to satisfy you. That which is always changing, has no real essence, no real entity, it all comes down to the same principle. Understanding the Noble Truths is about really understanding this human condition, how we suffer, how to abandon it. Or if you like, the other way around, how to abandon suffering comes from understanding, one, that we do suffer, two, how and why we suffer, three, the path to abandoning it, and four, the goal. So in a way, it always comes down to the same principle. All these factors come together. And so, for all of you and all of us monks as well, these are, what I'm saying tonight is very, very basic principles. And it's also universal. I'm not really talking much about, I talked a little bit about the historical Buddha, but mostly it's about being a person, being a human being, and not distinguishing between laymen, monks, women, men, old people, young people, Malaysians, Thais, or Buddhists, whatever. We're all basically the same. And this is the human condition that we all find ourselves in. The key thing that we, in a sense, have to understand, the point the Buddha was making really comes back to this thing about suffering, what he called dukkha. Dukkha means something which is difficult to bear, something which is tough, something which is not satisfactory. And the key real principle that the Buddha pointed to was that we all experience this in our lives because of what he called tanha, or craving. The mind which is going out, which wants things. I want this, I want that, I don't want this, I don't want that. I like this, I like that, I like him, I don't like her, I don't like this. There's always something to crave, there's always a way of craving. And it sometimes is very subtle, sometimes it's just a little bit, just not so comfortable. Sometimes it's big craving. And the big craving we experience is around ourselves, old age, sickness, death. So again, this is the question which we're, in a sense, we all have, but we just push away all the time. But it's the most relevant issue for all of us. See, now everyone's scared of coronavirus. Everyone's thinking, oh, I could die. And we forget that it's just there all the time. It's not that suddenly the world is filled with dangers, but before December it was a safe place. It's just another example of how we have this issue with us all the time. Aging, sickness, death, decay, separation, liking, not liking. You get what you want, you don't get what you want, you get the things you don't want. This is the cycle we're in. The endless samsaric round. We just go round and round. And we're in it. We can all feel it. The Buddha's point was, it's happening inside our mind when we constantly, what's called going out, we're craving. So using patient endurance, stop. We begin to stop the craving cycle. We stop with the big cravings. That's why the Buddha outlined the 5 precepts. It's the, you could say, minimum standard. Don't cross this line. Don't kill animals. Don't steal. Don't be unfaithful to your partner. Don't lie. Don't take drink and drugs. Yeah. And you have to decide to do it for yourself. You say where our money. It's not the monks telling you not to. You decide. But the monks are just saying, or the Buddha was saying, look, this is my advice. This is our advice to you. And so you use your patient endurance. You stop. You avoid evil. Okay, say it again. Avoid evil. Do good. Through that, you do good. Through abandoning this craving, you learn how to stop. Train the mind. So then, especially these days, you're in a very lucky situation. All of you should really reflect on how lucky you are. This morning I was talking to my monks, fellow monks. We're so lucky. We can live on the mountain, on the hill. Then in the morning we drive down or walk down. Then there's a whole buffet table. You can choose anything you like. You have your bowl, big bowl. Here they even give you a nice little string basket. You can put your sweets in the basket. And then you go up, or you say a blessing. Okay, you have to work a little bit. And then you go up. You say, okay, see you tomorrow, miss your buddy. It's quite nice, isn't it? Yeah. You know, we're so lucky. I'm not saying this. I'm saying this is really. What a wonderful situation. I can't complain. If I'm sick, got medical, if I need cloth, there's donors, sponsors. And then I can talk Dharma with my friends. I can have my kuti, no locks on my doors. I can leave stuff there. No one's going to lie to me. No one's going to steal. No one's going to be unfaithful to me because I got no girlfriend. It's great. So what a lucky life. So we've got it all. So we have a lot to be grateful for. And it's the same with yourselves. Just to be here, you can see you're all wearing nice clothes, you can drive here, you can be here tonight. We're very, very fortunate in terms of what the world can give us. And so we have a lot to be really grateful for. We're already we're in great shape. But of course, we're still in this. We're in great shape, but we're in the cage, in a golden cage of old age, sickness and death. We basically have everything we need, but we're not out of that cage. So again, so now this is where we have to train the mind. This is where we're going to go deeper now. It's not just enough to, satisfying enough to lead a good life, to have our friends, to have our nice makan, and you can watch TV, you can, listen to Dhamma talks. There's still going to be dukkha in your life. There's not enough. This is where we come to training the mind. We're going to go deeper now. For those of us who have the intention or the inclination or the good merit, whatever you want to call it, the brains, the character. And we're very lucky now. We've got all kinds of retreats. You can do Goenka, you can do Mahasi, you can go up to SBS, you can do self-retreat, you can do temporary novitiate program, you can pick and choose, pick and mix, you can got the whole range as well. But the point is you can find a way to learn about meditation. And again, all of the meditation should hinge on another key principle, the present moment. That's what we're doing. We're not thinking about the future, not thinking about the past, letting go, not craving the past, not craving the future, not craving anything else, just simply allowing ourselves to be in the present moment. So whatever technique we're doing, it will evolve around some aspect, around not clinging and running to the past, not running to the future, not somehow wanting the reality to be different. We can maybe have a wish for ourselves, for example, I would like to grow in the Dhamma, I would like to cultivate wholesome states. That's our wish, it's very good, wholesome aspiration. But we have the capacity and the situation, what we call the supports, to train ourselves. Especially I can see many of you are, you could say, senior citizens. And even those that aren't yet, none of us are getting younger, we're all getting older. And so this is the time to think about this and to reflect on this. How are we going to use the remaining period of our lives? How are we going to, take advantage of the fact that we're comfortable, we've got the support of our family situations, and use it well. Now some people may have some real dukkha going on in their lives, got medical conditions, got family crisis, family drama, financial condition, difficulties. That's true. But at the same time, we're still at a level where we can, and we have the lucky support just to be here. It means we've got some support where the Dharma is able to play a role in our lives. And that's something to be very, very grateful for. I know for myself, when I think about my life, I feel so lucky that just at the right time, just when I needed it, I was able to somehow connect with the Dharma. I met the right people, got to the right place, and changes your life. You realize there's an alternative, or there's an extra dimension in the world, extra way of thinking, which is going to be very, very beneficial. And in a way, with faith, in a way it answers all of the problems. It can't solve the issues of, like say, old age, sickness, death, climate crisis, coronavirus. The Dhamma can't eliminate those. But in terms of how we feel about those things, that's what the Dharma can do. We're changing ourselves inside. So one of the lines we chant, and many of you, I think, probably chant this when we chant Itipiso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddha, you know this? And then we chant the Dhamma Svakato Bhagavata Dhammo. The Dhamma is well expounded, apparent here and now. You can experience it right here, right now. Akaliko means timeless, means it's the same Dharma throughout the ages. It's got no point in history. And also the real Dharma is the present moment, which has you can't measure the present moment. There's another line which goes, Pachatan Veditabo Vinyuhi. We usually translate this as to be experienced individually by the wise. So the Dharma is something you experience for yourself. You know it for yourself. But the word Veditabo comes from what's called Vedana, which means feeling. So the Dharma, it really means the Dharma should be felt for yourself. The Dharma really is about feelings. How do you feel? It's not intellectual knowledge. The whole point of what we're doing here is to feel good. And so the Dharma is about emotions. It's about how do we feel. And you know it for yourself when you feel better. So you can feel terrible about the climate crisis or about family sickness or your own sickness. Or you can actually feel okay about it. You don't like it, but you can feel okay about it. There's no thing, no person, no situation that has the power to make us suffer unless we allow it to do so, or unless we create that suffering based on that condition. And this is a very powerful message. In fact, some people just can't even accept it. The Buddha's message, the message of the Dharma, is that we all have the capacity to change the nature of our minds, to wake up. Buddha means awake. And experience or feel very differently about the world. We're going to feel differently about ourselves, feel differently about other people, feel differently about life, old age, sickness, and death. Ultimately, it's a feeling of freedom. When you feel happy, you feel free. When you feel free, you feel happy, you know. I've visited prison, but I've never been in prison. But I can really imagine when you get out of prison, you feel so happy. Why are you happy? What did you get? You got your freedom. And the Buddha used the word freedom so much, vimutti, mutti, moksha, liberation. It's always talking about the mind which is free. Not free to fly, free to do whatever you want, free to buy whatever you want. In a way, it's free from, not the freedom of craving, the freedom from craving, the freedom from desire. When the mind feels happy because it's content. When you're content, you have everything you need you're full already. You don't lack anything. You have everything because you feel like you don't lack anything. And so in a sense that's the Buddha's message, simply put. To the monks, when he first, after his enlightenment, he went to visit the monks, or he walked from his enlightenment place to where his first group of monks were practicing. His first group of disciples, they were called the group of 5. And they had left the Buddha because the Buddha started eating rice gruel to get his strength back. The Buddha thought, okay, I'm almost at the point of death. It's not working. So he started eating again. And the monks are with him saying, okay, he's gone soft. He's given up. He's not trying anymore. So they left him. Then anyway, the Buddha got enlightened, and then he walked to visit them. And when he met them, they didn't want to listen to him. They said, here he comes, that failure, that quitter, he'd given up. But then he said, friends, I've realized the Dharma, I've realized freedom. Trust me. I'll teach you, and you'll realize it for yourself. They said, no la. They say like that. They say like that, no, they said, trust me. I've realized this supreme liberation. I've realized it for myself. I can teach you. They said, no. Twice, 3 times. And then he said, all these years we were together, did I ever speak to you like this? And I had to stop and think, he never said this. And they realized, he's never lied to us. So again, it's the power of truth. So they listened to him. That's when he taught the first teaching, the Dhamma Sutta. He taught them the Dhamma, and they realized it for themselves. So that's the powerful message. The Buddha is saying, look, I realize this, I understand this, I'm a human being, you're human beings, you can get it too. And so that's the message, and that's the thing which I think for myself, the monks, for all of us, inspires us, leads us, keeps us going, leads us on. Because this is a training which we can all do. And we see the results for ourselves. You don't have to ask, you don't have to wait for some future goal or some future life to get the results. You just ask yourself, when you keep the 5 precepts, does it feel good or bad? It might be difficult, but you know it feels good. It's like exercise, it's difficult, but it feels good. When you listen to the Dharma, when you practice generosity, when you have metta to your, doesn't it feel good? So you can test it. You can test the Dhamma for yourself through asking yourself, does it feel right? Deep, right inside, does it feel good? Be honest with yourself. In the long term, you know what's good for you. We all know. And so that's the simple teaching. We can all realize happiness through letting go of our dukkha, suffering, through practicing what we call the Eightfold Path, cultivating, using the precepts, avoid evil, do good, cultivate the mind. So I think I'll stop talking there right now. I've said enough. Nothing new. I hope everything I said today, basically I hope you've heard it before, because it's just simple, straightforward Dharma, and it's always good to just get repeated. In fact, it should, I know for me, just hearing the same old stuff like the chanting, when we do the chanting, I never get bored of it, because it feels good. It's like an old favorite song. You don't get bored of your favorite songs. I mean, you might do if you play it all day. But if you have a little break and then come back to it, actually songs get better, they grow on you. The Dhamma's like that, it grows on you. Because the more you're able to practice it, the more familiar you get with it. And you receive the benefits. And then of course your mind is changing. You know, what to do the neuroscience, the synapses are changing, the brain is changing. The areas of compassion are expanding, metta, the areas of dosa, anger are shrinking, hopefully. And the point is it feels better. And your family like you more. So I'll stop talking now, just say that. Now I think we'll open it up. Everyone likes Q&A. So feel free now to ask any questions, something related to the Dharma, and keep it to some kind of aspect of Dharma.
Thank you, and salute to thank Ajahn Siripanyo for your engaging and inspiring Dhamma sharing. Let us all together say 3 times sadhu. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. We shall now open for the session. The session for the floor to ask questions. For anyone who would like to ask questions, please raise your hand. We can pass the mic to you, or maybe you could speak loudly.